Hi, hi. What's up, everybody? Oh, we're attempting the scatters right now. And it got ruined. And it got ruined. Looking old today, Josh? What does that mean? What does that mean? Why are you dropping that in chat for and then just like drop a scatter after and then you're just like done with it? What's up, everybody? Did you just time someone out because they ruined your scatter combo? That's not how it works. All right. Welcome everybody. It's Banlist yapping time. We're gonna be talking about everything new TCG Forbidden and Limited list related today. We're gonna talk through some of the stuff. I have had some time now, obviously, to think about it, but yeah, I'm still not sure on some of these things. But we will go over, how exactly does this impact certain decks in the format and all that kind of stuff. All those things today. Today and tomorrow are the last streams this week. I'm leaving for Worlds on Wednesday. Well, my flight is on Thursday, but I'm staying at Emra's house on Wednesday, so I'm leaving Wednesday. So today and tomorrow are the last two streams, and they are also going to be, both of them are going to be a little bit shorter than usual because I've got some stuff left to do before I leave for Worlds. That is important. But we're just gonna see how long it takes. I don't have a set time for today, but like at some point I'm gonna have to go. And tomorrow is my birthday, so I'll be live for a couple of hours, but not as long as usual because I want to spend it with like family and friends and stuff like that. So yeah. Is your girlfriend joining on a trip to Woes? Not this year. She's been with me in some of the previous years, but this year she's staying home because we got the cat now and all that. So yeah. When are Worlds? Next weekend. This upcoming weekend. In 5 days is the first day of Worlds, the Saturday. All right. All right. So while everyone assembles and gets ready for some banlist discussions, why don't we have a phenomenal round of card guesser to warm up? Nightsider, thank you for the 10 months. Appreciate you. Ryan JW, thank you for the 8 months. Appreciate all of you guys. Thank you, thank you. All right. We're warming up. We're warming up. Okay, this is some Supreme King shit. Supreme Dark Rebellion? Dark Rebellion. Supreme King Dark Rebellion? There we go. That's a ninja. Ninjutsu art. Super transformation, I think. Yep. Yep. Nephthys. But last hope. Last hope. Chad coming in clutch. I'm not sure what this is. It's a Blue Eyes card? Record? Heraldry record. Okay, not a Blue Eyes card whatsoever. Not even close. Oh, Fogblade. Ah. I zoomed too much on this one. I'm a zoomer. Oh, not the Octodix. Please. Is it an Octodic? I think it is an Octodic. Nunu? Nunu? Nunu! Fluffle Bear. Um... Is that just Neos? No. Wrath of Neos? Wrath of Neos. Fright Fur, right? No, Zombao? Zombao. Okay. Not a Fright Fur. Could have been a Fright Fur. Lizard? Yeah. Mystic Vok? Wait. Oh, with a K? Hello? Zoom? Who is that? Bergamot? Bergamot? Oh, Lily Borea. No. This feels familiar. Yeah, Mars. Oh. LP. Cooking. Hex sealed. Light. Who this? I don't know what this is. Reversal of Fate. Reversal of Fate. Okay. Disturbing artwork. Allure Queen. 5, I think. No. Allure Queen 7? Ah, come on. Ah, come on. Yeah. Ja. Magistus Invocation. Yeah. This might be a Samorg spell card. I have no idea what it's called, though I'm skipping it as fast as I can. Samorg Repulsion. Yeah. Rock. No, is it what? It's Stone Dragon. Yeah, not Rock Dragon. I don't know this one. Misjudge. Head judging. Head judging. Okay. Hero card. Wake up your elemental hero. Mm-hmm. It's not Mirage Stalio, is it? It is Mirage Stalio. Okay. Don't know this one. Uradora. Okay, we got a Karibo here. Which one is that? Reeling Karibo? Yeah. Imakura. Dude. Is it Click and Echo? No, I don't think it's Click and Echo. It's Imairuka, that one. All right. Dude, Leotar. Yeah. This spiritualism. Spiritualism. Yeah. Big Think. Thank you for the tier 1. Appreciate you. Also, everyone else, I'll read your names in a second. Patchwork. No? Repair? Oh, I thought I had it. This is a Crystal Beast card. But I think it's a spell trap. It's not Topaz Tiger. Crystal Pear. Crystal Pear. Oh, I don't know if I feel like I've seen this one. Litmus Doom? Yeah. Grave Keepers. Chief. Marinces Sea Angel? Yeah. Yangzing. Which one? Zafrani? Yeah, Zafrani. This is a... Oh, I've seen this one. Yeah, it's the Kaiju. Jizukiru. Ritual Beast. Steeds or Ambush? Apelio? Oh, it's just... Okay, it's the main deck monster. I thought it was one of the traps. What is this? I don't know. Odd Eyes Advent. Okay. Dude, I love him. Which one is it? I don't know which one it is. Mame Maki? Is it Mame Maki? No. I don't know which one it is. Balls. Onikuji. This one? Oh, I've seen this one. This is old. Zork. Dark Master Zork. Zork. Yeah. Plague Spreader. Venominaga. Trident. Trident Dragon. Wait, is this Venominaga again? Yeah. Okay. Karud. The Mystic Mine guy. Quasar. Oh, Cyber Dragon. Oh, God. Why did I zoom once more? I didn't need that. OG Cyber Dragon. Caius. I've seen this one. Is it? It's not anti. It's not trade in. I don't know what it is. It's not anti. Old mind. Oh, it's me. This is like something Dragon Souls. Castle of Dragon Souls? Yeah. Dude, it's not. Is it Jupiter? No, it's Mercury. Wisdom. Mercury. Wisdom. That's Lapaulia. Yeah. Element Saver. We're so close. We're so close. No, it was 2. What is this? A Raid Raptor? Oh no, you're giving me a Raid Raptor. I hate it here. Not a Raid Raptor, dude. The birds, man. It's always the birds. Always the birds, dude. God damn it. All right. All right. Well then. Fanatics, thank you so much for the Prime. SNKage, thank you for the Prime as well. Helios, thank you for the 15 months. Nightsider, thank you for the 10. Appreciate all of you guys. And 1957 Anis, thank you for the 10 months as well. All right. Well, not quite 1K, but pretty good round. Pretty good round, if I may say so myself. All right, let's go over to this one real quick. Start with our boy Rongo. It is, in fact, a dark monster. Okay, it's a weak dark monster. DD Crow. It's not that weak. Tour guide. Oh, wait, it's 0 defense. I missed that. 0 defense, level 3 fiend. Is there a BA with those stats? Burning Abyss. Is there a BA with 0 defense? Alec. Oh, it's Alec. Okay, easy clap. Easy clap. Quick one. Quick one. Easy. All right. All right. Now, obviously, guys, our topic today on a stream that is not going to be as long as usual, simply because I've got some stuff left to do before I leave for Worlds. And today and tomorrow are the last 2 days where I will stream. Today's topic is obviously going to be the the TCG Forbidden and Limited List update that we got this past Saturday. I've had some time to think about some of these things, but obviously I also want to go through some of my thought process together with you guys. So we're like going to try and see what exactly does it change? Does it change anything? Because I feel like a very common sentiment in the community right now is like it doesn't change anything, which I think I don't agree with that. I think it does change some things. I think there is a lot of stuff on here that's good, but obviously it's not perfect. It's not ideal. I'm with you guys on that. I am skeptical about a lot of the stuff that isn't on this list, rather, right? I'm fine with the things that are on here, I think, is what I've like that's the conclusion I reached when I thought about it some more, is like a lot of the stuff that's on here I'm fine with. But obviously I have the impression that some of the decks in the meta are still a little bit too powerful, or I wish they would have been hit harder. And I want to have a discussion about that. I also want to have a discussion in general about like the life cycle of like top tier meta archetypes. I feel like it's something that I wanted to talk about, because I feel like that's also where one of my main frustration lies with this format or with Snake Eye in general. But like it basically, long story short, we're gonna talk about a lot of the things and dedicate some more time to it. Some of this has already been mentioned on the podcast recording yesterday. So if you've watched that, we're basically going to go a little bit more in depth on some of the topics that we talked about in the podcast this weekend for the list. But I think there's a couple more things that I want to add here and there. So yeah. I also have prepared some of these for some of these things. Also, like I want to make my mind up about it and think about like how strong is it still, which is why I have also prepared some of the cards here, so we can talk through some of the possible things that you can still do with those decks to maybe consider like, okay, how is it like how is it gonna actually impact the format in a practical way, not just like theoretically, like we're all aware that theoretically one Snake Eye Ash still does a whole lot of things, but like in practice, how is it going to look? We also know that like a card like Fiendsmith Engraver is still a good card, but like how good exactly is something that I want to like think about maybe together, right? But like as a start, yeah, I don't know exactly where to start and how to start, but like I guess let's go over it like one by one. Let's go over it deck by deck maybe. Maybe that's a that's a good way to start, is to just go over different decks and talk about how this list impacts those decks, and then think about whether we are happy with those changes to those decks, right? Like, how does this impact certain decks in the metagame, and do we think that is a proper like addressing of those decks, right? So, and why don't we just begin? I feel like we should begin with the elephant in the room, which is obviously Snake Eyes, right? So let me move some of these cards aside. Let me move some of these cards aside. And let's talk about Snake Eyes. All right, so Snake Eyes is losing on this list. Snake Eyes is losing a couple of different things. Actually, you know what? Before we talk about Snake Eyes, we should probably talk about Fiendsmith first, because Fiendsmith affects every single deck that we're gonna talk about today, I feel like. So maybe we should cover Fiendsmith first, because Fiendsmith is something that affects Snake Eye lines, it affects Yubel lines, it affects other decks as well. So like this is a big thing that we should talk about probably, and is also in my opinion the best or the most positive surprise of this list is how it handled the Fiendsmith cards, right? And looking back at the situation, I feel like this is something that gets overlooked because they didn't hit Snake Eye enough, which I agree with. Snake Eye was not hit properly, but Fiendsmith was handled in a very good way, I think. So Fiendsmith, as an engine, when it came out, we all knew that it's going to be super meta impactful and super powerful and super good in so many different decks. So I feel like we all were kind of confused collectively when they announced these two cards, right? Aerial Eater and Necroquip Princess were two cards that we were like, why are these cards in Infinite Forbidden? Why did you feel the need to give us more support for the Fiendsmith engine when it was basically already guaranteed that it was going to sell and that it was going to be powerful, right? Like at least that's what I felt like at that time. I was like, why is there more support for Fiendsmith? And people were thinking the same thing, I feel like, over on like social media, right? And in hindsight, though, I personally think this is an overall very good move. Because I feel like the reason why Lacrima was a common and the reason why these two cards were included in the Infinite Forbidden, from today's perspective, it just feels super obvious that this was planned all along. It was planned, and they knew that like they wanted to hit the Fiendsmith cards because they didn't agree with the power level that these cards provided, basically, which I think is good. I think it's a good thing that they banned Lacrima and gave us replacements, right? Because banning Lacrima without Aerial Eater in the game would have pretty much killed the Fiendsmith engine. So this would have not been possible. Banning Lacrima would not have been possible if they didn't make Aerial Eater, because what are you going to really do with the Fiendsmith cards without Lacrima and without Aerial Eater? It's basically not completely unplayable, but really like it's lacking like any kind of synergy in Fiend decks. So the Lacrima ban, what it does, first of all, it removes the very toxic time win condition, which is a different topic, but it also is really, really good, right? It's great that you don't have to worry about like, oh, my opponent is just going to go first 2 minutes before timeout, burn me for 1200, and that's going to be it, which, by the way, is also incredibly hard to prevent, right? It's incredibly hard to prevent Lacrima's burn effect because it returns for cost to burn you, right? So you can't interact with it with a Bestial or something like that. It was incredibly hard to prevent the fusion summon from happening because even if you were able to, like, let's say you imperm the sequence, they could still use Tract in the graveyard to fuse into the Lacrima. So preventing Lacrima was virtually impossible if the opponent had access to the Fiendsmith cards, right? So this being out of the format, just as a burn win condition is already phenomenal. But I want to talk a little bit more and think a little bit more about what this does to like the Fiendsmith engine as a whole, right? Like what can you still do? And there's basically two different ways you're using the Fiendsmith engine, right? You are either hard drawing Engraver or Tract, right? You're either hard drawing Engraver or Tract, or you're going into it via a Moon of the Closed Heaven by turning like two bodies into a Moon of the Closed Heaven, right? And so let's just together, let's think about how powerful these two lines, or these three lines rather, still are, right? So let's start with the most obvious one, which is the Engraver hard draw. Like an Engraver hard draw, you would obviously play it in a way of like, you would discard the Engraver from the hand to the graveyard, you would add a Fiendsmith Tract, you would activate the Fiendsmith Tract, and you're obviously also still going to search the Fabled Lurry and then summon out the Fabled Lurry. And then the Fabled Lurry is always going to be, this is very straightforward, it's going to be your Fiendsmith's Requiem. And then the Requiem tributes itself to summon a second copy of Engraver from the deck. And here, after you've brought back this Engraver from the graveyard by shuffling back, for example, the Lurry, you have two options, right? You have two options because you can no longer do this, right? You can no longer do Engraver into sequence, into fuse these two into Lacrima, and then revive this Engraver to basically get the Link 2 Link material, and then also the rank 6, right? That's what you cannot do anymore. You cannot do Link 2 plus rank 6. When you are in this spot of having two Engravers here and one Light Fiend in the grave, you can still directly go into a rank 6, right? So one Engraver still equals one rank 6 without normal summoning, which is powerful. Don't get me wrong. It's powerful, but it's less than before. And also, it's not Beatrice anymore, right? Beatrice is also gone. It's either going to be a Wave King High Caesar, or Wave High King Caesar rather, or a Lars, I guess. Lars is also an option that I think is worth mentioning. But because Beatrice is gone, this means that any deck that wanted to use the Fiendsmith cards as a way to start their engines can now no longer access any card in their deck by sending Beatrice. It's not something that you can do. It simply is not something you can do, period. You don't have a way. The Fiendsmith engine does no longer send Snake Eye Ash from the deck to the graveyard, for example, right? But like one card in your deck, still this, if you want to go Fiendsmith Engraver into Wave High King Caesar, for example, to protect your combo from something like a Nibiru, which is going to be a realistic thing that some decks might want in the upcoming format, because obviously with Appaloosa being banned, being able to play around Nib with a card like this is very powerful. So this is why I think the Fiendsmith cards are still good, because one Engraver still gives you a Wave High King Caesar. But basically you lose a lot of you lose a lot of flexibility, right? You lose a lot of flexibility because you can't go into Beatrice anymore, and you also lose a lot of link fodder because you don't have the sequence over here anymore, and you don't have the burn damage anymore if you draw Engraver directly, right? But Engraver directly is still a rank 6, or Engraver directly, if you are at this point, you also have the option to go into sequence and then shuffle back all 3 to make a sequence, to make a Desiree rather. And then you can either, if you can link off the sequence, you can equip it from the graveyard, or you can equip it from the field to the Desiree. So you can still set up a 1-card Desiree. This is possible, right? An Engraver is still gonna set up a 1-card. The key thing here is that you have to decide now between, do I get my Desiree, or do I get my rank 6? I'm not gonna get the extra link fodder if I want a rank 6, and I also can't use Beatrice anymore. And that is with Hard Drawn Engraver, right? And so here's what you can do. Here's what you can or would do if you draw, for example, Fiendsmith's Tract, right? If you draw Fiendsmith's Tract, you can go search Lurie, pitch Lurie, special Lurie. You would make a Requiem. The Requiem summons out an Engraver. And here, you obviously, in order to have this be a 1-card combo, you'd have to equip the Requiem and make a Necroquip Princess by sending these 2 to the graveyard. Then you can shuffle back the Fabled Lurie to summon a Fiendsmith Engraver. This line doesn't change all that much with the absence of Lacrima, because if you are at this point, actually this line, it changes a little bit, because when you go into a sequence here, this doesn't really, because this is a Dark Fiend and not a Light Fiend, the only thing you can really fuse into here is an Aerial Eater by fusing the Requiem and the Engraver now, right? And then you can use this as a card in your in any Fiend deck. This is still good, but because this is a Dark Fiend, you actually can't make Desiree with the sequence here, which is a little weird, right? It's a little weird. It's a little weird. But it was also weird beforehand, because even when Lacrima was still legal, and this is why it didn't change that much, if you wanted to make Lacrima here, because it requires 2 Light Fiends, you'd have to shuffle these 2, right? You'd have to shuffle these 2, and then the Lacrima doesn't have a target to revive. So this was already before the Lacrima ban. Starting with Tract alone does not really change that much, because the Lacrima was not a strong option in this case anyways, right? But still, yeah. So before I think the more realistic way how people are going to use Tract, if Hard Drawn, is to, instead of making a sequence here, because sequence here only is good if you're playing a Fiend deck, basically, I think you can just make your rank 6 right away. I think Tract is still a good card because it is a 1-card rank 6. So in this regard, Tract and Engraver are relatively similar now in non-Fiendsmith decks. Because in non-Fiendsmith decks, most of the time, not non-Fiendsmith, not Fiend decks, right? Not like Yubel. In non-Fiend decks, your Engraver and Tract are basically, quote-unquote, limited to just making one rank 6, which is still good. The ability to summon a Wave High King Caesar with one card is powerful, but it is significantly less powerful than before. But here is another scenario, which is a very common scenario that a lot of people were also worried about, which is the fact that, let's say you get hand trapped on, I don't know, 2 cards like Snake Eye Ash and the Abel Star, that you would just turn those, obviously, you would just turn those into the Moon of the Closed Heaven. So let's see how this changes when you don't have access to Lacrima, right? So obviously, Moon of the Closed Heaven goes into Requiem. Requiem goes into the Engraver. And here, you have to equip the Requiem to make the Necroquip Princess. Then you can bring back the Engraver by shuffling back the Moon of the Closed Heaven. And we're basically in the same spot here. But the main thing here is that your deck just doesn't really get to combo anymore, right? Like if we're specifically talking about Snake Eye, this is like not really a combo, right? You have to play Ether or M7, then you can make Sequence, then Princess. Yeah, but it's significantly more extra deck space that, like, I don't know you want to do it. So, well, even if you play, I don't even know. I didn't even look for M7. Hold up. Let me grab my M7. So, where's my M7? I have an M7 here. Okay, so if you go M7 here, you would detach the Engraver to to add back the Engraver, right? And then you have to Engraver into Tract. Tract summons Lurie. Then you have enough Light Fiends to go into a Sequence. And the Sequence can summon, right? But what do you mean when you say it combos? Like, what do I do here to combo? Because even if I get to Princess, the Snake Eye Ash has already been used. It can tag out, but it's not even close to full combo. Send for Poplar, get original. Send for Poplar, get original. Okay, you're ending on a combo, yeah. You're not getting a board that's nearly as good, though, and you have to spend, like, a bunch of extra deck spaces on it. Like, if you go... Let's say you fuse... Sequence... Yeah, okay, let's say you fuse with Sequence into... What, like, in this case, you fuse into Desiree? Just to have a body for Promethean? Ether? But you could have made Ether without going through M7. What's the point of making M7 there? Yeah? So you have to play either Ether or M7. You wouldn't play both. You have to play one of the two, not both. Right? So in this case, we've used M7, so we're not going to go through Aerial Eater. We're just going to make a Desiree by shuffling back, like, I don't know, 3 Light Fiends, which we have exactly 3. Like this. And then this can make a Promethean. Do I have a Promethean somewhere? You make a Promethean, you get back Ash, you send Ash and Promethean. Or Poplar, you grab original, you make Anima. I don't know where my Anima is. Anima, Poplar Place, activate this, summon Oak, bring back, send for Flamberge, make IP Masquerena, bring back 2. But then you don't have Promethean anymore, so you can't even really set up a Masquerena in the spell Trap Zone. I'm sure you can still end on some stuff, but it doesn't feel. It's worse. I feel like it's worse than before. This entire situation is worse than before. I feel like the statement of it didn't do anything is just incorrect. It is worse. It's still good though. It's still good. That's a thing. That's a thing. 100%. It's still good. No questions asked. The I still think it is a significant hit to the Fiendsmith engine when used in other decks, because the way that these cards function, it's just like it's hard drawing engraver is a lot weaker, which I think is relevant because of a couple of things. It creates less bodies, and it doesn't give you access to your engine anymore. Like when we're talking consistency in Fiendsmith Snake Eye, I feel like you don't only have to like subtract 2 Snake Eye Ashes from the equation and 1 Poplar. You also have to take into account that these cards are also not going to access your fire cards anymore, right? Which the deck is still, in terms of its 1-card starters, the deck is still completely fine. We're going to look at it in a moment, but it is significant. It is a significant change until the Examina cards just make it irrelevant. That is something that I agree with 100%. The Rage of the Abyss is going to ruin all the progress that this ban list has made in terms of like hitting Snake Eye, right? Because it does do something in the regard of hitting Snake Eye. It's just that progress is going to be undone with Rage of the Abyss. But for now, I think a fair thing to say is that the Fiendsmith cards are getting significantly weaker in most decks that just splash them without becoming unplayable, which is, I feel like that's an ideal way to solve specifically the Fiendsmith cards. I think the ideal outcome for this situation was this, right? Like, because they were never going to kill it like a month after release or 2 months after release. I don't know exactly when it came out. They were never going to ruin the Fiendsmith engine, but they have made it significantly weaker, which I think is more than what people expected in the case of Fiendsmith, right? And who knows, maybe this also leads to the cards being slightly less expensive. I don't actually know. I haven't looked at the price of Fiendsmith cards. Maybe they get a little bit more affordable now because they are less powerful and less mandatory in some decks. I'm not sure. But I'm sure because Yubel is still really powerful, then like the Fiendsmith cards are still going to be expensive. Like they're not going to be cheap. I guess we can check real quick, but I'm not expecting them to be cheap per se. Fiendsmith Engraver is currently sitting at 60 to 65 on card market, which is, it's not a cheap card by no means. I would not feel comfortable feeling this calling this a cheap card. But it was about 100 when it came out, or like 90 something, right? It still is a lot of money and very expensive. I don't want to deny that at all, but it is cheaper than it was a month or 2 ago. But yeah, it's not great, but it's I guess a little bit better than before is all I have to say. But yeah, the one thing that this also did is it kept the Fiendsmith cards good in Fiend decks, because in Fiend decks you basically don't suffer that much from the banning of, you don't suffer as much from the banning of Beatrice and the banning of Lacrima, because you simply have an alternative for both of those cards. If you want to send the Fiend card from your deck to the graveyard, you've got Aerial Eater, and Aerial Eater is also your replacement for Lacrima at the same time, because it's a good fusion to summon with 2 materials. So I think for Fiend decks specifically, the Fiendsmith engines, the Fiendsmith cards are still phenomenal. So what this ban list achieved basically is make Fiendsmith worse overall, but mostly nerf it in non-Fiend decks. So it's still really powerful Fiend support, but less powerful overall as an engine, while still playable. which in my opinion is good. I think this is good. I think the way the Fiendsmith engine was handled on this ban list is appropriate and very good, and I'm actually very happy they did it in exactly this way, because they also removed the most toxic card out of the deck, which was the 1200 burn from Lacrima. So overall, the way Fiendsmith was handled, in my opinion, here is good. So let's talk about, now that we've talked about the Fiendsmith engine, which is going to probably affect most other decks in the format, let us talk about Snake Eyes real quick. So I think there's one thing about Snake Eye that didn't really change at all. And that is, or like not at all, but just like slightly. And that is the amount of one-card combos in the deck, right? The amount of one-card combos for this deck, if we're talking just the Snake Eye cards, has gone from what was one card combo beforehand. Let's not use like situational ones like original, which you needed a normal summon with, but like you were usually playing 3 Dia Bellstar, 3 Wanted, 3 Bonfire, 3 Ash, and 2 Poplar, which is 14. You are going down to 11 in terms of like just raw chance of opening a 1-card starter. You're going from 14 to 11. If you want to include the Fiendsmith cards, which I think is a fair inclusion, you were at 17 and you're now on 14. No, you're now on 11. You went from 17 down to 11, which is a lot. 17 down to 11 is a lot. 1 for 1, I guess you can count 1 for 1, even though it's not technically a 1-card starter, but yeah, I guess you can count 1 for 1. So you're going from 18. Let me see if I have a 1 for 1 lying around somewhere. I don't. Anyways, imagine a 1 for 1. You're going from 18 to 12. Poplar doesn't do it anymore. Poplar only does it if you play frickin' Snake Eye Birch, right? You can still combo with Poplar, but I think you want to play Snake Eye Birch for it. But like Poplar, I'm pretty sure Poplar is still a combo. You can still do significant amount of stuff with Poplar, but it's gonna be, Poplar has always been the weakest starter, right? Poplar has always been the weakest starter. That didn't really change. It still is the weakest starter. It still does combo though, right? Like it still does combo. Because you can still go Poplar, Link 1, search original. Where's original? Original. Where did you go? There. So you search original, you make a Link 1, you send the Poplar for original, you summon Oak, probably. If you don't play Birch, you summon Oak, revive Poplar, and then Oak sent the Link 1, summon Flamberge, and you're at Flamberge plus Poplar. So you can do that, right? So it works. Even without Birch, it kind of works. But so I think going from just 18 1-card starters to 12, I mean, we can look at it. There's ways to just take a look at that. Hold up. And put it into context. All right, let's say we're playing a 40-card deck now. If you had, I mean, before the ban list, it was usually like a 45-card deck. So they were playing 18 1-card combos, and you were playing 18 of those. You had a 93% chance to open at least a 1-card combo in Snake Eyes. 93%, which was obscene in a 45-card deck. Now, this number goes down to 12, and your deck probably goes down to like 40, which is like going down to 40 cards in Snake Eye is not only a positive, right? This your chance to open a starter now goes down from like around 94 to 85, which is 9% is a lot. 9% is a lot if you're playing a long tournament. And the fact that you have to go down to 40 cards also has a lot of negative effects on your games, right? This means you're gonna draw your now one-off Poplar more often. You're going to draw your Flamberge more often. You're going to draw your Snake Idea Bellstar more often. You're going to draw your whatever other card you don't want to see in your deck more often. Your Oak, your, I don't know, Fabled Lurie. All those cards are going to be way more often in your opening hand, right? Like a 45 card deck. How many bricks did how many quote unquote bricks did Snake Eye play before the list? They played Oak, Lurie, Flamberge, Snake Idea Bellstar. What else? Original isn't really a brick. Temple isn't really a brick, but you don't want to draw those. I don't want to call those a brick, but like they're not ideal. But like sometimes there was like Tract is fine. So let's just say like on average like they had a 46% chance to draw a brick, at least one. And if they were playing more, if you want to count some of those cards that are sometimes bricks, like Temple or Original or something, then it's going to be higher than this, right? But they already had, in 45 cards, about a 46% chance to just draw like at least one card that you don't want to draw. And like if you go down to 40 now, this also goes up by a solid like 5% if you're doing only 5, if you only want to count 5s, right? So it's a lot of subtle changes in the Snake Eye deck. I think you're gonna notice it though. I think you're gonna notice it if you try to play pure Snake Eye, and we will do that. We will do that next week after Worlds. I simply don't have the time for it this week, but we will do a test of it next week. I'm gonna build a pure Snake Eye deck, and we're gonna remote duel and see if it still feels that way. Because at the moment, I'm limited to doing theory on it. I'm limited to doing theory on it, and that's all I got. But to me, it feels like saying the deck isn't impacted by it at all, I think is not correct. And here's another thing. Moving away from just raw numbers, right? Moving away from just raw numbers on what is the chance that my opponent still draws a combo, right? You also have to factor in, and you always have to factor this in Yu-Gi-Oh! It is never just, oh, what can my deck do with this opening hand uninterrupted if my opponent just doesn't play or doesn't have a single hand trap. You have to factor in, like, how does my deck interact with my opponent's hand? Because you can find countless one-card combos in Yu-Gi-Oh! That would be incredibly powerful, but like they are not, because you are playing versus an opponent who also puts cards in their deck, right? And I think a couple things that change in the Snake Eye deck are the following. These cards down here, Dia Bellstar, Wanted, and Bonfire, are such incredible cards, and the reason why Snake Eye was so powerful is because you can use those cards not only as starters, but also as extenders, right? And it is just significantly less likely now to see an extender in Snake Eye, even though the extenders didn't get hit that much, because with only one Snake Eye Ash being your ideal normal summon, right? Or the way you want to start your plays is usually by normal summoning Snake Eye Ash. That card is limited. You're going to see it relatively rarely. You're going to see it sometimes, and the hands where they draw Snake Eye Ash are going to feel very hard to stop still. But if you don't hard draw Snake Eye Ash, you will have to use one of these cards to find it. And if you do that for your opponent, that cuts a lot of possible extenders from the equation. If my opponent has to start with one of these cards to find the Snake Eye Ash, Dia Bellstar, or Wanted, if I have one hand trap in my hand, there is not that much that my opponent can have to extend. They basically need to have exactly Bonfire. And sometimes they will, right? These cards are still all at 3. Sometimes your opponent is gonna draw Wanted and Bonfire and not gonna care at all when you hand trap them once. But sometimes, like more often, they will just not have a 2-card combo to play through hand traps, especially because these 6 over here cannot pair with each other, right? You cannot pair a Dia Bellstar and a Wanted to play through one hand trap. You cannot pair two Dia Bellstars. You cannot pair two Wanted. You also can't, obviously, you can't pair two Bonfires. So, like, the only card that pairs with all of these super well is just hard drawing a normal summon, which is significantly less likely now than it was before. So statistically, when you don't just look at it, oh, what can this deck do when it goes uninterrupted? I think in practice you're going to find that it is going to be easier to interrupt it. Slightly. This does not mean this deck is unplayable by all means. I'm just saying, like, there are factors to think about. And the other thing is just like Poplar as a whole is at one, it's just really annoying. This is a very annoying hit to me, but it does do something. It's just the problem is whether this does something to the deck is completely up to variance, right? Because if this card, when you're playing against Snake Eyes, if your opponent doesn't draw the Poplar being at 1 doesn't really change anything, at least on turn 1. Maybe on turn 2 it can change something because you can't grab a Poplar with original on turn 2. But, like, if my opponent doesn't open the Poplar, then their first turn combo is not impacted at all. It still is in their deck. It's going to create frustration moments for both sides of the players. Like, if you are the Snake Eye player and you open Poplar, you're going to feel at a disadvantage and it feels bad. If you're playing against Snake Eye and they normal summon Snake Eye Ash and search Pop, you're like, oh, of course they didn't draw it. Or like, why could they not just draw it? So that's going to be annoying. But once again, statistically, drawing the Poplar is gonna kind of suck. And I say kind of suck because obviously Poplar still is a normal summon and it still does do a combo, right? Like, normal summoning Poplar is still not bad because a Poplar, think about it this way, a Poplar that's being drawn still has 2 out of its 3 effects, right? Because the only thing that you can't do with the Poplar that you drew is you can't special summon it when you add it. But you still have the on summon you search, and when it goes to graveyard you place, which is still a really good card. So I think Poplar is like, Poplar to 1, drawing it is going to be annoying, but it still isn't the end of the world, right? So overall, I think statistically, Snake Eye is going to be impacted from this. It is not going to be enough to kill Snake Eye for now. And well, once again, all of these things I'm talking about is pre-Rage of the Abyss, because I think it makes the most sense to evaluate this ban list before Rage of the Abyss. I think after Rage of the Abyss is a whole nother topic, and I think Rage of the Abyss in general is just a stupid set that's going to ruin all of the progress that this ban list has made. But that's a different topic that we're going to talk about later. Here's another thing. Here's another, and here's a bigger thing in my opinion. When it comes to evaluating Snake Eye post ban list. I'm sure some of you guys have theorized this already. Enlighten me. How does the pure Snake Eye deck beat Nibiru? Like, the pure Snake Eye deck. Outside of just drawing Engraver to make a outside of just Engraver to make Caesar, or like hard drawing Crossout for it. Field spell? Okay. All right. So walk me through, even hypothetically, how does it make any sense when you tell me the field spell is going to help you play around Nibiru? Because the key of playing around Nibiru with the Snake Eye deck was always, I'm going to establish the field spell early, right? I'm going to establish the field spell early, and I'm also going to establish a Flamberge early. Or maybe both, maybe it's just one of those things, but like, you're going to establish these cards early to discourage your opponent from using the Nibiru. But then every single time you did this, at some point throughout the combo, you would have to pivot into an Appaloosa. Because if you have to keep your Flamberge on the board for the entire turn, one Snake Eye Ash beats Nib by making Caesar before committing Flamberge float. Okay, how? Snake Eye Ash, Poplar, Original. And then what? You go Temple. Okay, you go Temple. Here's Temple. This is too long to write in chat. No, it's not. No, it's not. Tell me about it. Don't just yap. Snake Idea Bellstar, I guess. Yeah, where's my Snake Idea Bellstar? Here. So at this point, we've summoned twice. We're gonna probably do this. Photon Lord, maybe? I mean, where's my Oak, dude? Do I have Oak? Oak! Here's Oak. So if you tag this into Oak, you bring back this. You've summoned 4 times. Oak sent field spell for Flamberge. Alright. Then these two make Closed Moon. Poplar places Snake Idea Bellstar. Closed Moon goes Requiem. Requiem goes Engraver. Equip Requiem. Make, I guess you couldn't bring out the Snake Idea Bellstar, or you can just make Princess. Then you shuffle back Closed Heaven to summon Engraver, and then you make Caesar. And I guess you would get nibbed here, right? You would have to get nibbed here. Otherwise, you just make Caesar. Where's my Caesar? Otherwise, you just make Caesar, then you bring out Snake Idea Bell by placing Oak, probably. You make IP Masquerade. Yeah. So, this does work. So if you get nibbed here, you get a token. Flamberge brings back 2. Then Snake Idea Bell can come out. You can make IP into Princess and to summon Flam. You end on Flamberge IP Amblowale, right? Or Rabbit. Link off token. Yeah, whatever. It's just about the number of bodies. It's just about the number of bodies. But yeah. Conclusion, it's a lot worse than it used to be. See, that's the thing, right? That is the thing, right? Yes, you have a line available, I guess. You have a line available. Okay, that's good to know. I haven't thought about this line yet. That's good to know. But it still is significantly weaker. It's still good. It's still good. I'm not trying to make the point. I'm not trying to make the point of this deck is now dead, but I am trying to make the point, or I'm trying to find out, like, is this deck impacted by it? And it is impacted, right? Because your opponent in this scenario also just has the Nibiru on the field, which you can't just, like, pop for free with the Engraver or something, because you had to go through it already. You don't have access to Engraver anymore. So your opponent is going to have a 3k body on the field, and you have way less than you did before. Right? And you also still have to play a significant amount of like extra deck card. Like your extra deck is still very limited. So I think one way to beat Snake Eye, quote unquote, in this whole situation is like, if you nib them, they're still gonna end on something, but you are forcing them into a grind game, and you're forcing a deck into a grind game that has severe extra deck space problems. Josh, there are only two outcomes. Bans did nothing or deck is dead. I don't make the rules. Yeah, here's the thing that I share the pain with you guys of, I wanted Snake Eye to die. I wanted Snake Eye to die, but the more I think about it, the less I feel like that was realistic. Maybe it's just an unfortunate situation of like, we wanted something to happen that wasn't realistic to begin with. For multiple reasons. Like, one of them is obviously lore, which is the stupidest one, but yeah. I don't know. I do think, and this is, I guess this is a good segue. I guess this is a good segue into another topic that I really wanted to talk about and hear your guys' opinion on it. And just like in general, I feel like this situation at the moment with Snake Eyes really warrants a discussion about like the way I would call it is like the life cycle of competitive top tier Yu-Gi-Oh decks and what we want it to be and what we know it like how this situation works. So what I mean by this is like I've been thinking a lot recently about like how long top tier Yu-Gi-Oh decks should stay around, or how long they have stayed around historically, and how in general, how do you handle a top tier Yu-Gi-Oh deck in any given format? Because like, let's be real, good Yu-Gi-Oh decks or best decks in Yu-Gi-Oh happens a lot. Like every format, most formats has like either one best deck or maybe a couple, but for the most part, those are like situations that happen every time in Yu-Gi-Oh. Whether it's Snake Eye this year, or Cash Tira last year, or Tearlament and Sprite the year before that, or whatever else it was before that, or even back in the day, decks like I don't know, Necros, Dragon Rulers, all those kind of decks. Like there's always been this sort of like behavior of deck becomes powerful, deck is being played a lot, and deck eventually gets hit on the list. And like, I just want to talk about how long should that life cycle be, and exactly how do you handle a deck? Because do you go from like leaving the deck untouched and then immediately killing it, or do you go from like just trying to make it a little bit weaker so it probably still is a good deck, and then eventually like 2 lists later or 3 lists later, that's when you kill it? Or you wait and see if maybe new Yu-Gi-Oh decks just are more powerful and you can naturally solve it by just releasing a more powerful deck. So like, historically, at least I feel like historically it's been very often the case that it goes something like this, right? Something like, we have a deck that releases, or maybe it becomes powerful because it gets support, doesn't matter, but it starts to become a powerful force in the metagame. Right? It's powerful, and maybe it's even the best deck, undisputed, or maybe it's the part of the best couple decks in the format, and that like lasts for a couple of months, right? Like the deck releases at full power, and let's say there's a first ban list 3 months in, right? Do we really expect them to kill the deck 3 months in? Usually not, right? Like no one really expects like, oh, like the last list, for example, was that one for Snake Eye. Like, did anyone really expect Snake Eyes to die on the April ban list this year? No. What we usually, I feel like the community quote unquote expectation for a list like that is like, that first list should probably more like a slap on the wrist, right? More like maybe make it a little bit more manageable to go up against this deck. But like we expect it to remain powerful, right? So we expect it to remain powerful, but maybe get like a slight hit to it, right? And then it's probably going to be still a dominant force in the next format. And then we expect another ban list at some point. So now here's my question. Do we expect that next ban list, after the first one was just a slight tap on the wrist, is the next one the one that needs to completely kill it? Or does it need to like significantly hit the deck, make it weaker, and then we like, you know, like I don't know if killing it is the right way to phrase it. I don't know if killing it after, let's say this lifespan is like 6 months or something, which actually is the current lifespan of Snake Eye. It is the longest lifespan. The lifespan of Snake Eye at the moment in the TCG is about 6 or 7 months, right? Like Wanted and Diabellstar came out beforehand, but Snake Eye has been a deck since, I think, when did Phantom Nightmare come out? February? I think it was mid-February, right? Or was it late January? I think it's February. So we are a little more than 6 months into Snake Eyes, right? And I feel like historically at least, after let's say 6.5 months, most decks have not been killed at least. So I feel like the reasonable thing to expect after 6.5 months is to have a significant hit to the deck. Like a significant hit to the deck that makes it definitely makes it weaker, right? And then after that, I personally feel like you should expect the deck to just fade out right after that. You expect the deck to get a significant hit on that ban list, and then maybe it's still playable, but it's significantly weaker. Maybe other decks are now the top dogs of the format, but you could hypothetically still cope on that deck, and then it's eventually going to phase out. Or if there's another ban list and the deck still was too powerful, then now is when we kill it, right? Roughly like this, right? So a rough lifespan of between, let's say 7 to 10 months for a top tier deck before it like starts to be tier 3 or like definitely significantly worse. Feels like historically is what we should be able to expect, right? And I know that with Snake Eye specifically, I think with Snake Eye specifically, here's my thing. Even after like 6 months of Snake Eye format just feels like longer. That's the problem. I think that's the problem we have right now as the community, is that Snake Eye being the deck for 6 or 7 months is not the same as, I don't know, Dragon Ruler being the deck for a year, or even like Sprite and Tier format for 6 or 7 months. It doesn't feel the same way. It feels longer because people don't like Snake Eye, right? People simply don't like Snake Eye is another problem. So I think what we have to talk about as well in this whole discussion is just like designing as well, right? Like, how is this archetype designed? Because I feel like we as a community are more willing to accept a deck for a longer period of time, even if it is a very powerful deck, if it's just more fun, right? And Snake Eye just isn't great. Like, we don't like Snake Eye. I think that's another huge issue that we need to address. It's not only about this deck has been meta for too long, because it's not been meta for longer than some other decks have. Like, it's just like that the meta isn't great with it in it, right? But here's my biggest frustration. Here is my biggest frustration, and the thing that makes the least amount of sense to me in this whole process of like, or this whole year of 2024, and it has nothing to do with this ban list, because in my opinion, if this ban list was the way it is, and Rage of the Abyss just didn't exist, it would probably be all right. It does significantly hit Snake Eye. It doesn't make Snake Eye unplayable. I understand that people want that. That's fair. But it does hit Snake Eye relatively hard, and you could expect that other decks might be better than Snake Eye now. And if we have a new set with new archetypes in it, right? If Rage of the Abyss, instead of bringing Snake Eye support, was bringing other archetypes that could maybe rival the now little bit nerfed version of Snake Eye, maybe it'd be fine. Maybe we would be looking forward to Rage of the Abyss instead of like dreading it. This could have been fine. This could have been a fine list without Rage of the Abyss on the horizon. And this is where my frustration lies at the moment. My frustration lies at the moment because we've just talked about this whole life cycle of a top tier deck, right? In the history of Yu-Gi-Oh as well. Like we're trying to put it into like historic context as well. Like most historic decks have like a couple of formats where they're powerful and then they phase out, right? It's usually not just one format, right? There are multiple formats where Dragon Ruler was the best deck. There are multiple formats where Necros was the best deck. There are multiple formats where a lot of other decks were powerful and probably even the best deck in the game. That is not unusual. But what is really unusual and completely blows my mind is the fact that we are printing Snake Eye support at the end of 2024. And this is something that I feel like is unprecedented to this level in Yu-Gi-Oh's history, maybe ever. Let me know if you can think of examples. But like the whole idea of, hey, this deck has been meta now for 7 months, and by the time that Rage of the Abyss comes out, it'll be 8 months since February. That the best deck in the game for 8 months receives as powerful as support of like even close to the support that Snake Eye receives with Azamina. Right? Branded is a different example. Branded is a different example because Branded was never this dominant. I'm not asking for an example of, hey, this is a deck that got support for a long time. That's not what I mean. That is not my point. My point is that this is the best deck we're talking about. We're not talking about like some deck that is part of like tier 2 that is widely accepted as part of the game. It's the best deck that we're talking about, right? Like we're talking about like this. You could compare this basically and you'll understand how weird this sounds if you've been around at those times. This is basically like if they printed custom Necros support at the end of 2015. Can you imagine how dumb that would have sounded? Can you imagine how we would have reacted at the end of 2015 if they just made another set that just had cracked Necros support at the end of 2015? If they gave us, I don't know, towards the end of 2019 TOS format, instead of printing new decks, they just print like a set that has just like a broken Thunder Dragon card in it and a broken Sky Striker card and a broken Salamangreat card in it. And I feel like it's so intuitively makes sense that they've never done that, right? That's just common sense to not do that. Like it's common sense to be like, hey, yeah, if these decks have been dominant for the full year, basically, you're not printing another wave of really good support for it, right? Like it blows my mind. It's like releasing like like new Dragon Rulers at the end of 2014. Like, oh, sorry, we banned the babies. Here are replacements to make sure the deck is still good in 2014. This is that. This is what they're doing right now. And this is what I wanted to bring up. And my main frustration with this entire situation is not this ban list, because this ban list did a lot of reasonable things. Like, would I have preferred that it hit Snake Eye even harder? Yes, I did. But like, yes, I would prefer that. But like, the ban list is not the main cause of my frustration. My frustration is that Snake Eye gets another wave of support, and that really, I cannot understand how that like, how does that make sense? Even like conceptually, right? I don't understand. And this is why I think like we need to talk about like set design, right? Like this is, and what we're experiencing right now is the huge downside of them basically making all these lore decks that last for a much longer time, which is a more recent thing, I feel like. What is the first lore that went on for like an entire year? Is it Visas or is it Branded? I don't even know. Branded was first, right? Yeah, Branded was first. Like the Albaz lore. Is the Albaz lore the first kind of example like this? Oh, World Chalice maybe. Yeah, you could argue World Chalice also kind of worked like that. I don't know. There's probably examples in the past where like decks got support over the time of multiple years. Even I think even technically like Clifford, Shaddoll were like part of the same lore, right? And Satellar, but I feel like it was different back then because they were distinctively different decks, right? Like it wasn't like all support being pumped into one deck. It was like Clifford and Shaddoll never went together. Satellar and Shaddoll never went together. Dual Terminal also was a lore kind of thing, but most of the Dual Terminal archetypes are still contained within themselves, right? They didn't do all that much like cross references and oh, this card is in this artwork and this archetype is connected to that archetype and so on and so forth. There are some examples of it, but for the most part, especially when it comes to meta archetypes, it was just like their own thing. It was a one-time release, maybe like a couple sets, but like close together, right? It's weird. It's weird, and I think right now we are experiencing the huge downside that this can have, because set design is not always the same as like, look, good set design does not always go hand in hand with good game design, because I feel like conceptually, right? Conceptually, this is something that people are a fan of, right? People like when lores like that go on for a long time and when there's a story behind the cards. That is something that people like, and I think that's why they're doing it, right? Like you look at like the Albaz lore, and it's probably one of the most like one of the lores with the biggest fandom out of recent years, you know, like it's something that people like. The Visas lore I feel like is less popular than Albaz, but it was still kind of cool to go like to see and like have people like tell stories about like how these cards interact with each other on a lore basis and all that kind of stuff. It was like fine. But here's the problem. As cool as it is when you're releasing cards that belong together for an entire year or something, or even longer, you have to be really careful with balancing. Because if those cards are too powerful, then suddenly you severely limit the ability of your game balancing team to really hit those cards in a significant way. Because from a game balancing aspect, those archetypes that are at the top of the meta need to be toned down significantly at some point, right? And you cannot just keep releasing more and more and more and more support into those archetypes, because then you will never get rid of them from the metagame, right? This is something that you have to be careful with. And this was already kind of mediocre with the Visas archetype, where the Visas archetype, yes, they were different decks, but the game was still very heavily dominated by different Visas archetypes. Like, it was Tearlament first, then it was Kashtira second, but at least those were different decks, right? At least those were different decks. With the Snake Eye lore, my huge problem with it is the fact that somehow all of this stuff, all of these different archetypes, they all go into the same deck. Why is it all Snake Eye support? And there's literally, you cannot make up a possible excuse, right? Because we've been talking about this on the podcast yesterday. Like, oh, but it's the lore that Snake Eyes just have something to do with all of them. Brother, they made the lore. They made that lore. Just make a different lore. Just make a lore where the Azaminas are, instead of being, I don't know, best friends with the Snake Eyes, make a lore where the Azaminar are good friends with the White Forest cards, and then you can make the Azamina support White Forest. Because technically, White Forest is part of that lore. Does White Forest receive good support in Rage of the Abyss? No. Does Azamina work well with White Forest? No. Not really. I mean, a little bit, but not nearly as much as it works with Snake Eye. Goblin Biker is part of that lore. Is there a new support archetype in Rage of the Abyss that supports Goblin Biker? No. They could have made lore for that. like, it doesn't make any freaking sense. It doesn't make any freaking sense. And now, and this is why I'm a little bit less skeptical of this ban list, because if you really think about it, what were they supposed to do, right? The Konami game designers, card designers in the OCG thought it was a great idea, gave themselves a pat on the back to like make the Azamina archetype like crazy, insane, get you an Omni Negate in Snake Eyes. And now the TCG banlist designers have to deal with that. They have to deal with that shit. They have to be like, well, the main archetype of Rage of the Abyss, basically, which is a water set. Like, it's meant to be a water set, like Rage of the Abyss, you know, new mermails and stuff like that. That set is at the best. The deck that benefits the most from that set is the Fire Snake Eye deck, right? And because of that mind-blowing decision by the OCG set designers, the TCG is in this position right now where I'm pretty sure they simply weren't allowed, or it doesn't make sense for them to kill Snake Eye right now. They just couldn't do it, right? Because like that set is so bad. My main frustration is with that set. Like, I just don't get it. I just don't understand why that set was designed that way. Because it just puts us in such a bad position in the TCG right now. And the OCG is in the same boat. Like, the OCG player base is in the same boat. They also didn't get rid of Snake Eye for them. Snake Eye is still dominating the OCG. And it's not even that close. It's only Tenpai and Snake Eye. Right? So like Rage of the Abyss blows my mind. It really does. And I'm worried about like this kind of pattern is just like something that we've never had. I feel like in Yu-Gi-Oh, where the last set, like the life cycle of Snake Eye is nearing its end. It should be nearing its end, right? Snake Eye, we've been having Snake Eye in the format as the best deck for long enough, to the point where we're tired of it. And even if you compare it to most historical archetypes, it is time for it to go, either now or relatively soon, right? It was time for Snake Eye to get a significant hit and either die or be a lot weaker, and then slowly fade out. Maybe one more ban list to completely kill it. Instead, we're getting a main core booster set that completely revitalizes it, gives it an Omni Negate to play around Nibiru again. All that kind of stuff. Mind-blowing decision, in my opinion. This is probably going to be up on YouTube, this discussion. So if it is, feel free to let me know in the comments what you think of this whole situation. I personally just feel like they need to be more careful with these lore archetypes, because you can clearly see with Snake Eye what happens if you don't carefully design those lore archetypes, because they put us in a very weird position. So yeah. I don't know. That's how I feel about it. TCG could have banned Flamberge and Azamina was still very powerful. It's just not the designer's fault. It is, because I think they just want to make sure that Azamina sells, and the only way to do that is to keep Snake Eye around. Like, I agree with you. The Azamina cards are good on their own. And they could have done more to Snake Eye. And I don't want to get all of the blame off of the TCG balancing team. 100%. They could have done more to Snake Eye and Azamina would have still sold. But I also think there is I don't believe that the only people making those decisions are the ones that are here for game balancing, right? I think there is a lot of other people involved in the decision making of a ban list. I'm pretty sure even the OCG, as like the mother corporation, is involved with the TCG ban list to an extent. And I think there is a real possibility that there were people at Konami who were like, we want to hit Snake Eye harder, but then there were other people at Konami who said, you can't do that. I don't know if that's true, but I'd like to think it is. I'd like to think that there's definitely people at Konami that were like, yeah, this Snake Eye deck has been too powerful for too long, and we don't like how it played. And other people were like, yeah, but you can't hit it. You're not allowed to do it. I think that's probably how it is. So in that regard, I am willing to cut them some slack and say the major issue is the fact that they are forced to try and sell Azamina as good as possible, which is an archetype that, quite frankly, shouldn't have existed or should have supported something else. Like Azamina should have just been like good White Force support or good Goblin Biker support or whatever else, you know? Heck, even you could have maybe made it so that like there's a deck that is more centered around Dia Bellstar itself, right? Because none of those decks are centered around Dia Bellstar. Like, even Snake Eye isn't centered about Dia Bellstar. You're summoning Dia Bellstar, and your main goal with Dia Bellstar is to get it off of the field as soon as possible to summon Snake Eye Ash. Right? Like, it's not about Dia Bellstar. Dia Bellstar is just a fancy version of 1-for-1. So it's all around mind-blowing core set design this year, really. The continuous spell is by far the best one, but I mean that basically you make that sound like that's not enough. You're like, oh, this deck gets, because look, let me see if I can find it. It was on one of the recent metagame reports. We can read through it together. Was it this one? I think it was the first one after Rage of the Abyss. I'm trying to see if I can find it real quick. Yeah, Rage of the Abyss. Here. This was the first OCG metagame report after Rage of the Abyss, which was released the Azamina archetype, right? And so with Snake Eye, here's what they wrote. Rage of the Abyss has given Snake Eye's decks a great boost with the addition of the new Azamina cards. The Azamina cards are a series of new fusion monsters related to the Sinful Spoils. As stated in the OCG database for blah blah blah, only one Sinful Spoils card is required to be sent to the graveyard to fusion summon a level 6 Azamina fusion monster with Sacred Azamina. This makes Sinful Spoils Deception, I believe this is the counter, the continuous spell, a starter by itself, as it could be used to fetch for Sacred Azamina and then sent to the graveyard for Azamina effect to fusion summon Murcielago. An opening with one Sinful Spoils Deception plus any monster card is as follows. Now, pay attention to this. Activate Sinful Spoils Deception. Sinful Spoils Deception effect. Tribute one monster from hand. Add Sacred Azamina from deck to hand. Activate Sacred Azamina. Send Sinful Spoils Deception from field to the graveyard to fusion summon Azamina Murcielago. Azamina Murcielago effect. Add Wanted Seeker of Sinful Spoils from your deck to your hand. Activate Wanted to add Dia Bellstar. Wanted effect banish to place and draw one. Special summon Dia Bellstar. Set original Sinful Spoils. Murcielago plus Dia Bellstar make Moon of the Closed Heaven. Sacred Azamina effect. Shuffle Murcielago into the deck. Add Sacred Azamina from graveyard to hand. Activate Sacred Azamina. Send original Sinful Spoils Snake Eye from field to graveyard. Fusion summon Rhea Silvera. Original Sinful Snake Eye effect. Banish itself from the graveyard as cost. Add Snake Eye Ash from deck to hand. Place Dia Bellstar from graveyard to the bottom of the deck. This simple opening sets up Moon of the Closed Heaven on the field, which can then go into the Fiendsmith combo. Snake Eye Ash in hand, which can be normal summoned. It also brings out Azamina Rhea Silvera early, which can negate an opponent's card or effect, protecting the rest of your combo from disruption. Then this Azamina continuous spell over here it adds Snake Eye Ash to your hand. It summons Moon of the Closed Heaven. And it summons Rhea Silvera, which is an Omni. So this card does everything and more. And you draw one with Wanted. This is better. Like, this does not only replace consistency. This is the best starter they've ever had. This is the best starter they've ever had, period. Right? Not only are they replacing the loss of, like, from the OCG perspective, it was like, well, 1 Ash, 1 Wanted, 2 Bonfire. We lost some consistency, you know. Not only does it replace those cards, but it's better than them. Right? It not only does it replace those cards, but it's better. And in a format like the TCG, right? Like in the TCG, it's even more frustrating, I feel like, because that weakness to Nibiru that the deck kind of has now, it's out of the window when they can summon an Omni before summon 5. Right? So this is the huge problem, of course. Like it's a huge problem. And this is basically gonna, if Snake Eye is gonna be less popular now in the TCG, it's gonna return after Rage of the Abyss, right? Show it with your OCG cards. I'm gonna make a YouTube video about it. Yeah, I have to sort the cards out, and we'll go through it. We'll go through it. I have them all in one pile right now. Let me see. So they lost 2 Ash and 3 Fiendsmith as starters, but they got 3 new 1-card combos and crazy 2-card combos for that. You think Ogre will be good again against the continuous and Ubel stuff? Let me quickly see. Does this card do anything on activation, or is it just weak to Ghost Ogre? Sinful Spoils Deception. Sinful Spoils Deception. Oh no, it activates. Yeah, you can Ghost Ogre it. You can Ghost Ogre it. It's not bad. The problem is, the problem with Ghost Ogre is like, this is only one line they have available, right? Like if you Ghost Ogre the Sacred, the Azamina Deception, it's nice, but like if they start with Bonfire, then Ghost Ogre is not going to be great, right? So there is a few things worth noting about this. Like there is other counterplay to the Azamina cards a little bit. You know, like cards like Ghost Ogre become better against the deck. Cards like Droll are better against this combo, right? Droll is not bad against this combo. Cards like Retaliating Sea. I think in one of the most recent metagame reports, they were starting to play Retaliating Sea because it was good against those. Yeah, Retaliating Sea is seeing a resurgence in the OCG right now because it's more effective against those kind of combos. So like there's gonna be different hand traps, but here's the thing: this is not what we're asking for, right? We're not asking for, and no one would ever in their right mind ask for that when we're talking about a top tier meta deck like 7 months into its lifespan. No one is asking for, hey, give this deck more support so that we play the hand trap mini game, but with other hand traps now, right? Like, oh, instead of drawing Imperm Veiler, I now want to draw Retaliating Sea and Droll. Like, that's not what we're asking for. That doesn't make sense. Like, yeah, there's counterplay to it, but that's not the point. That's not the point. So, yeah. But as you can see, just for context, this is the current OCG metagame breakdown. 31% Snake Eye. And they also have 1 Ash. They even have 1 less Bonfire. They have 2 less Wanted, but they have 1 more Poplar, and they have Appaloosa. Which I think Appaloosa is a big deal. I think Appaloosa is significantly going to change the way this deck plays. Also, they have Lacrima, they have Beatrice. Like this extra deck, the extra deck for us is going to be a lot weaker. So, yeah. Linkaribo too. Yeah. So basically, the approach that they've taken in the TCG for now is they've weakened the extra deck a lot and the main deck a little. I feel like it's all gonna be, a lot of it is gonna be down the drain after Rage of the Abyss. I genuinely, before Rage of the Abyss, I think this ban list is okay. Before Rage of the Abyss, this ban list is okay. I think especially pure Snake Eye will suffer from it. It's easier to interrupt now. It's not dead, So if you wanted it to be dead, then I guess this ban list did not do enough for you. It also did not do enough for me. I wish they killed it. I understand why they didn't kill it, though, because of Rage of the Abyss, right? And that's the frustrating part. Hit us with a tier list. I need to think about it more. I need to think about it more. We'll probably do a tier list tomorrow. We will probably do a tier list tomorrow. But let's talk about some other things. Let's talk about some other things that are not just Snake Eye and Fiendsmith related. Let's talk about, I guess, what do we start with? I wanted to talk about Nibiru and implications of Apo being banned. I wanted to talk about Tenpai with Prosperity and Sangan summoning. I wanted to talk about Fire Kings. I guess Fire King makes sense because we just talked about Snake Eye. Where is my Sangan summoning? Somewhere here. I wanted to talk about Yubel. I wanted to talk about hand traps in general, and I guess floodgates. Those are some of the things I still wanted to cover today. So let's begin with Fire King, because that is the because we just talked about Snake Eye. That makes sense, I think. So in my opinion, Fire King Snake Eye, and this is, once again, this is my impression. My impression is that Fire King Snake Eye is going to be the way to go for before Rage of the Abyss. Because that deck is still very, very powerful, and that deck suffers the least from one Snake Eye Ash, one Poplar. I think it's very comparable to the deck that we have in Master Duel at the moment, which is the best deck in Master Duel. Even though we do not have Volcanics. But I think overall, you have less consistent access to your Fire King cards through Volcanics. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if you start your Fire King plays using Volcanics or if you start them using your original into Poplar, into Ponix, right? So like the fact that you can play more Diabell Star than in Master Duel and more Bonfires is gonna make the deck fine in that regard. And I think the biggest reason why I like this deck is because it actually has super clean lines to play around Nibiru still, right? It has Arvata, right? And so the way you go about it relatively simply is just like you're gonna resolve a Garunix, you're gonna pop an Arvata in the grave, bring back your Ponix, make a Promethean Princess, bring back the Arvata, and then just combo next to the Arvata. This is going to be very intuitive for everyone who's been playing Master Duel. If you're not playing Master Duel, then it is really time to check out the Fire King Snake Eye deck. I might like also make an introduction video for it for some of the combos, because the combos are going to be different in the TCG than they are in Master Duel, because obviously some cards are missing, and we don't have access to Volcanics at all. I don't think not having access to Volcanics is a huge problem. I think it's still fine. Here's a few things about Fire King Snake Eye. Just a couple of things about Fire King Snake Eye. A couple words of, I guess, positivity about it. I genuinely always felt like playing against the Fire King version of Snake Eye was more fun than the pure version of Snake Eye, simply because this deck has less room for non-engine. It's still, if you're tired of Snake Eye, you're still not going to enjoy this format if it's a lot of Fire King Snake Eye. But I personally find it more fun to play with and play against. There's also some more counterplay, like cards like Soul Release are pretty good against Fire King Snake Eye and can actually break the setup. Like the Fire King Snake Eye board is more outable than the pure Snake Eye board. That is why everyone was playing pure Snake Eye or Snake Eye Fiendsmith. That was a more popular version for good reason, right? Like no one was playing Fire King Snake Eye for good reason before this ban list. So people being forced to play Fire King Snake Eye is a step in the right direction. It is progress, right? It is progress because it is a less powerful version of the deck. And I'm gonna be realistic with you guys. There was a 0% chance that Fire King Snake Eye was gonna die from this ban list. There was no shot. There was absolutely no shot that Fire King Snake Eye was gonna die from this ban list. Because I'll tell you a couple things. If they banned Snake Eye Ash, you could have still played Fire King Snake Eye. If they banned Poplar, you could have still played Fire King Snake Eye. If they banned Flamberge, you could have still played Fire King Snake Eye. Now, the versions of the deck play all three of those cards for good reason. They would have been weaker without them, but Fire King Snake Eye was going to be a viable deck no matter what. No matter what. I guess Original would have done it. Yeah, okay. Original would have done it. But Original was also, I think, because of Azamana, the least likely card to get banned. But yes, Original would have done that. With Original banned, you could have played just pure Fire King. But, like, yeah, I agree with you. Original would have been nice. But I think it was highly unlikely that this deck was going to not be a thing after this Forbidden and Limited list, right? Because even if they banned, like I said, one of these three cards, it would have still been fine. So this is one of the decks that I think are worth looking into. It is a way more interactive deck than pure Snake Eye. It has less room for non-engine. So you're not going to get hand trapped to death by it every single time. Like, just for context, the Fire King Snake Eye decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel at the moment, they have like usually between 9 to 12 hand traps, which is still a lot of hand traps, but it's less. Usually it's like 9 hand traps plus some outs to max C with called by and cross out. But like it's less, right? It's not 20. It is not 20 like it was in Fiendsmith Snake Eye, right? So this is something that I think is worth bringing up. I think this deck is going to be better because of its easier time playing around Nibiru than pure Snake Eye. But yeah. Maybe 17. I mean, okay, so you're gonna play an Arvata. You can get away with one Ponix. You can get away with one Sanctuary, one Island. You play one Skyburn. You can play one Garunix. You can only play 2 Kirin if you want to. It's a relatively small package. It's a relatively small package. You're gonna play Flamberge, Ash Poplar, Original. Depends on whether you want to play the Fiendsmith cards in it as well. You might want to. I don't know if you're gonna play Snake Idea, Bellstar, or Birch, or Oak. Can't play all of those. You might want to play Oak. So you can make it a deck focused around non-engine. But Fire King is also like a pretty a deck that functions better with drawing more engine. Oh, you're also gonna play the Diabell Stars, of course, like this whole chunk over here. Yeah. I don't know. It's worth playing more Ponix since you don't have many normal summons, potentially. Yeah, I could see them playing more Ponixes because you kind of just want to start with it, and you might want to replace your missing Volcanixes from Master Duel. I could see that. Is it good with Tri-Brigade? It is good with Tri-Brigade. I doubt it's going to be the best version of the deck, but yeah. Let's talk about this card. Let's talk about this card real quick and the impact that it's going to have because this card is banned. I have mixed feelings about this situation right now. Overall, I personally think Nibiru being a very relevant card that decks cannot just ignore by making Appaloosa is a good thing. I am a little worried now in this exact next format because I think most decks are going to be still able to play around it, like especially the top tier decks, right? Like if you think about it, like Snake Eye decks are going to have to pivot and think about how they solve it, but they can. You know, like Fire King Snake Eye is a version of this deck that is fine against Nibiru. Yubel is a top tier deck that doesn't care about Nibiru at all because of Phantom of Yubel. Tenpai doesn't care about Nibiru at all. And Branded also usually is fine playing around Nibiru, right? So some of those decks that were hit on this ban list or were supposed to be hit on this ban list, some of the top decks in the format don't actually suffer that much from Nibiru. I think some other decks, some of those crazy combo decks that relied on Appaloosa exclusively are gonna have a problem with Nibiru. I personally don't have an issue with that. I like when people have to respect Nibiru. I hate nothing more than drawing a card as powerful as Nibiru and then my opponent just completely ignoring it because their deck can just summon an Apple on 5. So I personally think it's a good thing, but I think realistically, what this does, it just eliminates some decks from the equation when you're thinking about a viable strategy, right? You're just gonna be like, okay, well, this deck cannot play around Nibiru, so I'm not gonna consider it, but this other combo deck can because there still are ways to do it. But I certainly this card is gonna see a lot more play. It already saw play before this. The fact that Apple is gonna get banned or is banned now is only helping Nibiru's popularity. But I do think that depending on how this goes, exactly, depending on what the most played deck is, Nibiru might unironically be more of like a side deck card. Like if the most played deck is Yubel, and then people are still playing Fire King Snake Eye, maybe Pure Snake Eye, Tenpai, or Branded, then like I don't see myself really main decking this card. But it definitely benefits from the Appaloosa ban. Sooner rather than later, we're gonna have a format where some of the top tier decks will simply have trouble dealing with Nibiru, right? So that is something to be like that's worth mentioning. Which brings me to another deck that I was concerned about before this ban list, and I feel like all of my fears came true with it. Yubel, in my opinion, is the biggest winner of this ban list, and I think Yubel is better than Snake Eye now. Is my personal opinion. I think Yubel benefits by far the most out of this ban list for a multitude of reasons. First of all, Spirit Gates to 1 is by far the weakest hit out of all of the meta decks, right? If you think the hits to Snake Eye aren't severe enough, the opening to 1 is definitely not severe enough. And while it was expected that they wouldn't hit Phantom of Yubel, I still am a little bit disappointed by it. I think Yubel is going to be a problem in this upcoming format because Yubel also benefits the most if a card like Nibiru sees more play because Yubel has access to Phantom of Yubel, which is probably the best way in the game at the moment in top tier decks to just deal with Nibiru, right? On top of all that, Yubel is also the only deck in the meta right now. I mean, there's other Fiend decks, but like technically Yubel is the only top tier Fiend deck at the moment where the Fiendsmith Engraver and Aerial Eater are still just like phenomenal starters, right? Like you can still use Engraver in Yubel to get access to your Fiend cards in the graveyard by just making Aerial Eater, right? So every deck that can make good use out of Aerial Eater does not actually care that much about the Lacrima burn. The Lacrima ban, not burn. the Lacrima ban, right? The Lacrima ban doesn't affect Yubel as much as it affects other decks, right? So I think Yubel walks away from this list a huge winner because people are going to play more Nibs. Phantom of Yubel is an insane card. This deck was not hit nearly as hard as Snake Eye. And the Fiendsmith cards are also still very, very powerful in it. So I think Yubel walks away from this a huge winner. And is in my opinion, I would always play. I have more. I believe in Yubel more than I believe in Pure Snake Eye at the moment. Is the way I look at it. Is my first impression. I think that Yubel was already almost as powerful as Snake Eye before this list, and I think this list switched the roles. I think both decks are still powerful, but I think Yubel is better now. I personally think Yubel is better. A relatively big loser of this ban list is Tenpai, which I think is fine, considering that Molcharmi Fuvaros is coming out and the deck is insane in the OCG because of it. I like that they hit Tenpai the same way they did in the OCG. Pot of Prosperity is a card that was long overdue. I like that card went to 1 finally. Sangan Summoning to 1 is also very, very good. This card being at 1 means that you can now realistically interact with the Tenpai deck when they go second. It is still a very good strategy, and they still have access to this card with terraforming and all that. So it is still good. But it means that basically because they only have 1 card, they only have 1 copy of the card. So by setting up something like an IP into an SP, if you just save that 1 interruption for the Sangan summoning, like all you need against Tenpai now, essentially. I mean, all you need. Of course, you can still lose, but like let's say you have an IP Masquerena and some other stuff. As long as you can hit, if you save your IP for the Sangan summoning, then you can use your other interruptions, your monster interruptions, on to actually interact with them. So I think that is that's good, right? I think this is a good hit to the deck, right? Yeah, but I don't think Tenpai is dead. To be fair, I personally don't think Tenpai is dead with this. I think Tenpai is still playable. It still has a lot of board breakers. You know, even if your opponent does set up an IP, you can just board break it. Agoraphobic, thank you for the 420. I will. I have to think about board breakers and hand traps more. I think we're gonna do like tier lists tomorrow. But today I'm more so like sharing my first impressions and thoughts. But I think board breakers are more realistic now for the simple like, especially, I mean, you have to look at the 2 best decks in the format, right? Like which the 2 decks that make the most powerful boards after this are like Yubel and either Snake Eye Fire King or pure Snake Eye. I personally think Fire King is the way to go, but we'll have to remain, like, I might be wrong. I think their boards are going to be a little bit more breakable than before, but the Yubel board like remains the same, and that was already really good against board breakers because of Varudras, right? Like Varudras being an Omni Negate is really rough. So it's kind of difficult. I think against Snake Eye, I could see a world where you can go board breakers now, because their boards are going to be a little bit weaker without Apo. At the same time, Apo honestly sometimes felt more like a liability when it was about board breakers, right? Because like Talon's Take Apo was so good because it dealt with Apo and it covered some of their other stuff. So I don't know. I personally, my instinct tells me that board breakers are slightly better now than before, but they're still like not better than hand traps, probably, right? Yeah, but Tenpai is properly hit with this ban list. I like it. So that's good. Here's a thing that I wanted to mention that I don't like, and that's, I feel like Crossout not being on here is, in my opinion, the biggest miss. Outside of like Flamberge, but I really would have liked to see Crossout go to 1 to stop a lot of those hand trap mini games, especially because Crossout is one of those cards that can theoretically, like, just imagine your opponent just plays a deck that completely heart loses to Nibiru and has like no business doing this many special summons and all that kind of stuff. And their justification to still be able to play that deck is like, what if you get nipped? You're just like, yeah, well, I play Crossout for it. And that's just like annoying whenever that happens. You know, like I just don't want people to be like, I'm gonna ignore the fact that Nibiru is good now because I can't make Apple, but I'm just gonna like cross it out. I don't know. I don't like that card. I think I understand that people are frustrated by hand trap formats. I don't think that cards like Crossout or Called By can be the solution to it. They simply amplify the problem of like, look, hand traps are being played because decks do too much going first, and cards like Crossout or Called By, like, they limit those kind of cards. They let decks play through those kind of cards, ignore them, and do their stuff anyways. The turn 1 in Yu-Gi-Oh, or turn 0 rather, like when you're going second, is already by far the least interactive turn of Yu-Gi-Oh. Like, and cards like Crossout and Called By make that problem even more apparent, in my opinion. That's like saying decks that can't play around Nibiru don't deserve to exist. No. But decks that can't play around Nibiru need to learn to play around Nibiru by not just ignoring it. There's other ways to play around Nibiru, you know? Like, for example, making only half of your board, keeping some of your resources in hand, and hoping that's enough. Or maybe building your deck in a way that doesn't, like, require it to full commit. My Runic White Forest deck from Euros did not have a way to play around Nibiru. So instead of using all of my resources to make as powerful of a board as possible, I passed with less. Does that go in people's heads that you can do that? When I thought my opponent might have Nibiru and my hand was really weak to it, even if I had extenders, I would say go. I made my Diabell level 8 Synchro, and I could have summoned more Runics and more Tuners, but instead I said go because of Nibiru. Because I thought I thought my deck could still play, and as a result, I got more interactive games because my board was not auto-win. But I respected Nibiru by doing less, and we got a good game out of it. That's what I want people to do. I don't want people to be like, hey, I'm full comboing. I don't care if you have Nibiru because I got cross out. Do you see the difference? Like, there are cards that promote healthy gameplay, and there are cards that promote unhealthy gameplay, and crossout is definitely the second kind. And there's another card I wanted to talk about, and I actually have to take it out of my 60-card Paleo deck from 2017, which makes me a little sad. I only have 3 copies of it. So I have to take one out of my Paleo deck now for this. But I want to talk about grass real quick. I wonder how you guys feel about it. I wonder how you guys are feeling about grass. I personally am a huge fan about it. The more I think about it, the more I like the change to 1 grass. Specifically 1 grass. To be fair, I don't know if I would like this card to be at 3. I don't want this card to be too consistent. Because I do acknowledge that there are some decks out there that are like super, they become super sacky. One is too. I don't think the problem with 1 is sackiness, because one reason I like 1 specifically is because you can search this card with Thrust now. So here's the thing: going first, grass decks have a very low chance of seeing grass. Sometimes they will, and that's gonna feel sacky. You're right, but most of the time they simply won't have it. And this is good because going first is already strong enough in Yu-Gi-Oh! Even when you're not resolving grass, right? Like, going first, you have 1 copy of grass in your deck. We're not going to talk about Left Arm Offering. That card isn't real. So you have 1 copy of grass in your 60-card deck, which means going first, you're probably not going to see it. However, going second, you will be very likely to actually be able to find it, right? Because you can use like Thrust, maybe Talents to draw more cards or something like that. You have at least 4 copies of grass going second, and going second is, I feel like, where this card is fine, because like going second in Yu-Gi-Oh, you kind of need some help, right? And so I think what people are doing in Master Duel at the moment is also something that I could see people do in the TCG, where you just like play a grass deck with like 60 cards, Thrust and grass in the Thrust with 1 grass, and it's just like, the reason why I like it, essentially, is because I don't think something like this is going to be the best deck in the format. But it's going to be solid. Like a 60-card, I don't know, Lightsworn Tearlament with grass or something, you just go like full gas, no breaks, is not going to be the best deck in the format, but you can like, you can reasonably play that and do well with it. And so what this does is it introduces a new way to build Yu-Gi-Oh decks into the format without it being the best deck. And I think that's always a good thing, usually. Like, just having a different option that feels different from some of the meta decks is good, but not too good, is fine. And I find it especially good because this card specifically does not help any of the meta decks. You know, Tenpai doesn't give a shit about grass. Snake Eye doesn't give a shit about grass. Yubel doesn't give a shit about grass. It doesn't help anything but like fun rogue decks, right? So I like the fact that grass is back. I really am. I really am happy about it. Also, it's a little bit of paleo support. Now, paleo is probably the weakest deck with like grass in mind. You know, you're gonna play it in your 60 card paleo, and it is good, but it's paleo is the only deck that can't really play thrust, right? So like in paleo, it really is just a one of in 60. But I have been playing it in Master Duel, and sometimes when you activate it, it feels really good. So I like it for that as well. But yeah, I'm gonna have to take one out of my 2017 paleo deck if I ever want to play it. But yeah. All right. It's cool and branded. Yeah, some people have been using it in branded and Master Duel as well. Which is probably something you could try in the TCG, because you have more copies of branded fusion, so it won't even feel that inconsistent, probably. But also, here's another thing. 60 card decks in Master Duel feel even more gambly because of Max C, right? Because 60 card decks are usually like all in, I'm gonna special summon a lot. And my odds of drawing an out to Max C are as bad as possible, right? You cannot have worse odds to draw an out to Max C than when you're playing 60 cards. So I think not having to worry about that in the TCG is actually quite nice. All right, so recap, aftermath. My first impression after having thought about this list for 2 days now straight, basically, haven't really thought much about other stuff in these last 2 days, is that I am very frustrated with the way Snake Eye has developed as a whole in 2024. I am frustrated with Rage of the Abyss as a set. I am not that frustrated with this ban list specifically. I think this ban list is okay. Obviously, there's stuff that's missing. I would have loved to see Shifter. I would have loved to see the Flamberge ban. I would have loved to see Sanctifier. But overall, there are a lot of things on here that I really like. Fiendsmith's Lacrima is, in my opinion, a phenomenal way to handle the Fiendsmith engine. I think it's genius. I think the fact that they created Aerial Eater and Necrocrypt Princess so that they could ban Lacrima without killing the Fiendsmith cards is perfect. Appaloosa ban is nice. Calamity ban is nice. Beatrice ban is nice. Skill Drain Limit is nice. Grass to 1 is nice. Sangan Summoning to 1 is nice. Prosp to 1 is nice. Opening to 1 is like not enough. So like overall, I think it's a good list. I think Yubel is a little too powerful now. I think Snake Eye is definitely going to be too powerful after Rage of the Abyss. But overall, my takeaway from this is that this list is fine, but Rage of the Abyss is bad. So yeah. And then here's the last thing I want to talk about, which is, I think, a sad thing. But I think all of these semi-limits and unlimits, I think the unfortunate reality here is that all of these are too late to the party. And I don't know if this is on purpose or if they were just too cautious and they actually thought it was going to be a problem if they did it earlier. But all of these, literally all of these, do not matter. Even Colossus to 2 is something that I don't care about, and here's why. Colossus at 1 already enables Colossus in all of the stupid combo decks that can make it. Colossus to 2 will not see play anywhere. The only deck that cares about that is Pure Thunder Dragon, and Pure Thunder Dragon is a deck that I have not seen in like 3 years or something. 4. So whatever. If for some reason you want Colossus to be legal, I guess it can be at 2. I don't care if it's at 1 or 2. Like, and to be fair, Colossus at 1, I don't think I got Colossus even once since the April ban list. I don't think I have gotten Colossus once. I've gotten Protoss. I have a much bigger problem with Protoss, but I haven't been Colossus. So yeah, all of those are fine. The Dragon Rulers can go to 3. The Lunalight Tiger can go to 3. Ib can go to 3. Colossus can probably go to 3. Armageddon, Red Rose, Kirin. Red Rose is cool, actually. You can do some cool stuff with Red Rose. There were times, I would lie. I would lie if I said there weren't times where I was hoping for 3 Red Rose Dragon to play some runic Red Rose pile. But I think now that White Forest is out, that's probably not going to be the best way to play runics. But I thought about it in the past. There were times where I wanted to do that, but the times are not now. Yeah. I thought about this, and I felt like these semi-limits and unlimits are kind of like tricks to make this list seem bigger than it is. You know what I mean? Like, the community buildup was like crazy for this list. Everyone was like, we need a huge list. We need this list to be big. And you're right. Like, big ban lists feel more hype. And so I feel like they saved all of those cards up for a time like this, where the community demanded a huge list. But the reality of this is, this ban list essentially has only those 2 pages. Forbidden and Limited is the only 2 things that matter. And I've been saying this before. On my ban list predictions, people were asking like, hey Josh, which cards do you think could come back? I never really cared about what kind of cards come back, because it's a lot more. At the moment in Yu-Gi-Oh, it's a lot more about what cards go on the ban list than what cards go off the ban list. Because the reality of things is, there are very little cards on the ban list that could realistically come back that would actually impact the format. There is not much. There is not much on the list that they could bring back that would actually, like, I don't know, rival Snake Eye or something. And even if they did that, like, here's the thing. There's 2 ways how you can handle a top meta deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! You can either kill it on the ban list, or you can power creep it. Which essentially, bringing something back from banned is also kind of like power creeping, right? Because you're making a step back in terms of the banning. Snake Eye is the kind of deck that you don't want to power creep, Konami. Snake Eye is the kind of deck that you need to kill on the ban list. You can't just be like, yeah, you know what? We're going to power creep that. Because I don't want to play in a format where Snake Eye isn't good anymore because it was power crept. That's not great. That's not great. So the solution was never to bring stuff back to solve the format. The solution was always hit stuff. So naturally, those semi-limits and unlimits, they don't feel impactful. They don't feel impactful. But that doesn't mean they're not good. That means they have to happen. It's just nothing to get super excited about. But all of these changes are good, and they should have happened. It's just nothing that impacts the metagame, right? But that obviously is a good justification to do it, because if no one is going to play Kirin at 3, then it should be at 3. If no one's going to play Armageddon Knight, it should be at 3. If no one's going to play Plushfire, if no one's going to play Red Rose, it should be at 3, right? And so, overall, I think this ban list is solid. Initially, I gave it a 7 out of 10. Then I got a little depressed because I thought about Rage of the Abyss and what it would do to Snake Eyes. And then I dialed back and I gave it a 5 out of 10. The more I think about it, I do think it's mostly Rage of the Abyss's fault. I think the list is like a 6 to 7 out of 10. I'm like okay with it. I'm not okay with Rage of the Abyss though. But that's a different topic, I guess. They are connected. They are a little bit connected. But I think this list is fine. I think Rage of the Abyss is the main problem. But yeah, look, there's a lot of stuff happening in my head as well. My initial impression of things is not always correct. I change my mind sometimes as well. And on this one, I thought about it for 2 days, and I think it's all right. Well, yeah. I'm coping with Lunalight, Tiger, and Grass in tier limits. See, at least that's a good thing it does, right? It does get some people cooking, right? That's a cool thing. At least I personally think the month of September is gonna be all right. I'm not actually like dooming about YCS Lil. I think YCS Lil is gonna be fine. I think you have like a format on your hands. It's probably not going to be my favorite format of all time because of how powerful yubel is, and because some people are still going to do Snake Eye stuff. But like, I think Lil is going to be an okay event, and then post Rhoda is when we're going to scream for the next ban list. We're going to scream for the next ban list in pain after Rage of the Abyss. Is the unfortunate reality. Which begs the question: is this list already up on the thingy? Does it already say no sooner than, or what? It's not up yet. It's not on the official page yet. This is still the last one, the April 15th. Because I'm waiting for this. I'm waiting for this because I'm excited to see. I'm hoping they're gonna change the way they're handling it after what happened this time around. I'm hoping that they will maybe change this little sentence here and maybe say like, look, honestly, all things considered, I wouldn't even be mad if they kept a vague statement like this one, right? Like, I actually am okay with something like the next ban list is going to be late November or something. I wouldn't actually hate that. How do you feel about that? Because I feel like that'd be like, I don't need to have one day. Like, you don't have to tell me the exact day you drop it, but at least like a better description of no sooner than a couple months, because that's basically saying nothing, right? No sooner than 2 months from now says nothing. That could be in 2 months, it can be in 5, it can be in 7. That is too vague, right? So honestly, I'll take late November. I'll take mid-November or something like that, you know? Like, this last week for me, honestly, it wasn't that bad. Like I said it multiple times throughout the week, it didn't really matter in the grand scheme of things whether it dropped Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or Saturday or whatever. Like, it was kind of like whatever, you know. In the grand scheme of things, if it dropped 2 days earlier, would that have changed anything? Not really. So like, I was fine with this late August situation. I just don't want to get no sooner than. I don't want to get no sooner than. Like, please, for the love of God, do not no sooner me right now, Konami. And I don't think I'm alone here. I think the community will not take it very well if this update goes on to the if this ban list goes up on the official website and it says no sooner than a couple months from now. I think people are going to lose their shit. I think people are going to lose their minds. And people already lost their mind. There's not many minds left in the Yu-Gi-Oh community. Minds have already been lost. Like, I don't think they should do that. My careful observation of the community's behavior in the last couple of weeks tells me, with a little bit of common sense, that I think we are done with the no sooner than. I don't know. I feel like I'm not the only one who sees that. I hope they see it too. I really do. The times where we are willing to accept the no sooner than, I feel like they're over. I feel like they're over, and I feel like they should know that. I feel like they should know better than dropping a list and saying no sooner than right now. Which maybe, here's my daily dose of copium. Maybe that's the reason why it's not up on the official page yet, is because they're talking about that right now. They're dealing with the how are we going to do it? When are we going to drop it? You know, because that takes more careful consideration, right? Which I think is why they didn't do it. They didn't give us set dates because they didn't want to commit, which is kind of like I don't know if lazy is the right word for it, but it's kind of like low effort, right? Like, oh, we're just gonna procrastinate now. We don't have to decide when we do it. Like, let's just see how it goes. Let's just release some cards. Uh, let's see what happens, and let's just drop a list whenever we feel like it. And so we're gonna give a very vague description of when it's gonna happen. Like, no sooner than you're chill for the next couple months, guys. Right? Um, so I think all it takes is some effort, right? Like, sit down with some people, get into a couple of meetings, talk about it. When should the next ban list drop? You can figure it out. You know the next couple sets. You know the release dates. You know when the events happen. Like, it's not that hard to commit to like a time frame of like if they say late November now, that still gives them like months to decide on the list, and it still is a time frame of like 2 weeks or something, right? So I think it's time this gets better. I really think it's time this has to get better. But yeah. Yapping? I mean, that's my favorite part about the new list, the yapping. They are too busy making awesome TCG exclusive archetypes. If only, man. If only. I wish you were right. I'm fine with them saying late November if they clarify the exact date closer to the time. Or something like that. Yeah, just like say the next ban list is happening middle of November or November or something, and then like in October, when everyone is starting to test for their events in November or something, right? Like YCS Bologna is in November. When people start preparing for it, then you give them maybe some more info. Like the ban list is gonna drop late November after Bologna or something like that, right? Or it's gonna drop before Bologna, that kind of stuff. But like honestly, I feel like what we're asking for here is like the minimum of like communication, like just a little bit. Are you seriously coping there will be a list for Bologna? That's not what I said. None of that is what I said. How do you feel about ban lists dropping on weekends? I don't really care about it per se. It's for me, it would probably be better if it was during the week because I'm live anyways. But then once again, if they announce the date like they did it this time, I can make sure I'm here on the weekend as well, so it's okay. It sounded like you think it's possible because I think it's impossible. I mean, it's not impossible. That is also, I don't think it's likely. It is very unlikely, but impossible is a very harsh statement. I don't think it's happening. I think that is too soon. What's the shortest period? Let me grab the ban list spreadsheet. What's the shortest period we've ever had with ban lists? The shortest period here is 50 days. 50 days. That's not even 2 months. Which I feel like if there's ever a time to give us a faster ban list rather than a slow ban list or a late ban list, I think it's now. And I think they are, I mean, they are not, Konami is not deaf and blind, right? They will see our feedback. They will see the overall community like sentiment on this list, right? And I'm sure they will consider how long the next one should be away. So I don't know if this one's gonna be, yeah. So this one was not even 2 months. This one was barely over 2 months. This one was a little over 3 months, a little over 3 months, exactly 3 months, a little over 3 months. And this one was over 4 months, almost 5, right? No. The problem is that the overall feedback that they care about, the spending, is so overwhelmingly positive for their decisions. They're rewarded for the lack of communication. I don't know if that is entirely true, because I think there are a couple of things happening at the moment that didn't happen in previous years that you would have to be pretty stupid to ignore those, right? Like regional attendance in the US, YCS attendance in the US. People's behavior on social media is always kind of weird, but it felt especially bad this year. So, like, I feel like they have to be getting the memo at least like a little bit, you know? And they do care about attendance. They have to care about attendance to their events, right? So, of course, it's not the only thing. Of course, if they are financially doing well, then they are at least like a little bit like enforced, or you know, they're getting some form of positive feedback from that, but they are also getting a lot of negative feedback, right? So the only thing is, at this point, we are just speculating, right? That's all we can do. Unfortunately, that's all we have available. But the unfortunate news is that we just have to wait and see. But I mean, I feel like I'm just looking at this over here, and it's like, at least this one is the first ban list since 2022 that deviated from the few months from now, right? Like, we've put up with the few months from now for 2 years now. We're fed up with it, and they kind of noticed that, and so they changed it up. So I guess that's something to be a little bit hopeful about. It's not like they're not willing to give us any communication. You know, they tried to do it a little bit better this time. It wasn't good yet. It wasn't good yet, but it was better than it was in the last 2 years, right? That is something. Well, yeah. What's the ban list spreadsheet link? I can send it to you. There you go. Is the ban list updated on the official page? No. It's still the old one. I guess I can check the the European one, but I'm pretty sure it's also not up. No. Do you think Bestials are going to be played a lot? I mean, it depends. I think Bestials are not that great against Ubel, but they're fine. I think Bestials were pretty good against, like, Bestials are good against Fiendsmith, and they still are good against Fiendsmith. Especially with Lacrima banned, I think Bestials get better against Fiendsmith, because let's say they have 3 light fiends in the graveyard and they go to fuse with sequence. If you now Bestial the Engraver, they can't go Lacrima to summon back from banished. Because if they are clearly trying to make Desiree, the Bestial will just stop the Desiree from coming out, right? So if your opponent's deck doesn't get value from Aerial Eater, then Bestials are really good against the Fiendsmith package. And even if they can make Aerial Eater, the Bestials are still fine. So I think they're good. Yeah, the way they handled Branded on this list is probably one of the stupidest thing about this list, in my opinion, honestly. I think the way they handled Branded is even worse than the way they handled Snake Eye, honestly. Like, it's less frustrating because Snake Eye is more powerful than Branded and more annoying than Branded, honestly. But if you just think of it like how they handled Branded is like it's mind-blowing. Like, just get rid of Sanctifier, dude. What's so hard about it? Like, what's so hard about that? Like, no one actually would complain about Branded if it wasn't about the lock. Like, if you have a freaking community manager, just go and send them to watch any sort of Banlist discussion in like the last year even, and it's always about Puppet Lock. It's never about, oh, Branded is too consistent, better get rid of Branded Fusion to 1. No one thought that. No one in their right mind was like, Sanctifier should stay, only Branded Fusion needs to get hit. That's crazy. That one's crazy. But yeah. All right, you guys. I know it's a little bit early, but we're ending it for today. Like I said, tomorrow is the last stream before I leave for Worlds, and there's a lot of stuff I still need to get done before I leave. So we're ending today's stream a little bit early. I feel like I've shared most of my initial thoughts about the ban list. We assemble tomorrow for a little birthday stream. It's my birthday tomorrow. And we're gonna do some tier lists, maybe hand trap discussions for the new format, all that kind of stuff. So I'm gonna prepare some more new format content for tomorrow. Hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for watching. Hope you tune in tomorrow. And yeah, you guys have a great rest of your day. And I'll see you guys then. Yeah. Bye bye everybody. Hope you enjoyed the stream. Thank you for the support. Peace.